El Pastor Riscado 200 caballos, y 20 mujeres apache dijeron. Somos tuyas, una. In the quiet of the morning, the world seemed calm, but for one man, the day was already full of purpose. His name was Mateo, a young pastor who had spent most of his life in the open fields, caring for animals and tending to his small flock of sheep. Mateo loved the quiet life, but he had a secret passion that few people knew about: horses. Ever since he was a boy, he had been fascinated by them. Their strength, their beauty, and their freedom spoke to something deep in his heart. He didn't just see them as animals, he saw them as friends, as beings that deserved respect and kindness. For years, Mateo had lived near a wide valley where wild horses roamed freely. The horses were untamed, wild in spirit and sometimes dangerous, but Mateo had a gift. He could approach them without fear, he could understand their moods, and he could calm even the most restless of them. People in nearby towns often told stories about the young pastor who could handle wild horses as if he had been born to do so. Mateo never bragged about his abilities. He felt it was a gift, something to be used responsibly, not for pride. One evening, as Mateo was checking on his small flock, he noticed dark clouds gathering over the distant mountains. He could feel the wind changing, and there was a certain tension in the air. He knew that a storm was coming, and he feared for the wild horses. The valley where they lived was open and exposed, and Mateo had seen before how quickly a storm could put animals in danger. Some of the horses might get trapped in narrow passes or lose their way in the heavy rain. The thought filled him with worry. Mateo didn't sleep that night. He sat by the fire, thinking about the horses and how to protect them. He had a small stable where he could bring a few, but there were more than 200 horses roaming in the valley. He realized he couldn't save them all alone, but he also knew he couldn't just stand by and do nothing. He had a plan forming in his mind, a plan that would require patience, courage, and skill. Early the next morning, before the first light had fully touched the valley, Mateo set out. He walked through the tall grass, careful not to make sudden movements that might startle any horse nearby. He carried a rope and a few tools, but most importantly, he carried his knowledge of the animal's behavior. He knew that to earn their trust, he couldn't force them. He had to move slowly, watch their body language, and make them feel safe. The first horse he encountered was a young stallion, strong but nervous. Mateo approached him calmly, speaking in a soft voice. The horse stamped his hooves and tossed his head, unsure of the man before him. Mateo didn't flinch. He crouched slightly, keeping his eyes gentle, and slowly extended a hand. The stallion inched closer, sniffed the hand, and then backed away. Mateo waited. He knew patience was the key. After several minutes, the horse finally relaxed and allowed Mateo to touch his neck. A small smile appeared on Mateo's face. This was the beginning. He spent the entire morning moving from horse to horse, guiding them gently toward the valley's safer areas. Some horses ran away at first, but Mateo never chased them. Instead, he stayed calm, letting them see that he meant no harm. By midday, he had gathered a small group near the edge of the valley, where the grass was high and the streams were flowing. The storm clouds were growing darker, but Mateo was determined. He knew that every horse he saved would matter. As the day went on, Mateo faced challenges he hadn't anticipated. A few horses became stubborn, refusing to move from the rocky areas where they felt safe. He had to climb steep paths and cross streams carefully to guide them. At one point, a small group of young foals ran in different directions, panicking at the approaching wind. Mateo called softly to them, his voice steady, and slowly led them back together. It was exhausting work, but he felt alive. He felt a deep connection with each horse, sensing their fear, their curiosity, and eventually their trust. During a brief break near a stream, Mateo looked around at the valley. The landscape was beautiful but dangerous. The storm was closer now, and the wind was stronger. He could see flashes of lightning in the distance. The thought of leaving even one horse behind made his chest tighten. Mateo knew he couldn't rest until every horse was safe. He also realized something else. This was more than a rescue. It was a test of his dedication, of his understanding of life, and of his patience. As the afternoon turned into evening, Mateo finally reached the largest group of horses, including several older mares who were slow but strong in spirit. These horses were cautious and watchful, but Mateo approached them with the same calm determination he had used all day. He guided them toward the shelter he had prepared, speaking softly and moving gently. Slowly, almost magically, the herd followed him, one by one, trusting him as they had never trusted anyone before. By nightfall, Mateo had succeeded in gathering nearly all of the horses. He set up temporary barriers using ropes and natural formations to keep them safe from the wind and rain. The storm arrived with full force, but inside his makeshift shelter, the horses were protected. Mateo sat among them, exhausted but content. He stroked the neck of a young mare and whispered, "You're safe now, I promise." For the first time that day, he allowed himself a moment to rest. The experience left Mateo reflecting on life, nature, and responsibility. He realized that caring for something meant more than feeding it or protecting it from danger. It meant understanding it, respecting it, and being willing to put oneself in discomfort for the sake of others. He thought about how every horse had its personality, its fears, and its courage, and he felt honored to witness it. That night, as the storm raged outside, Mateo felt a deep sense of accomplishment. He had faced fear, exhaustion, and uncertainty, yet he had succeeded because of patience, understanding, and care. He looked at the sleeping horses, their breathing calm, and felt a quiet joy that words could not fully capture. This was more than a rescue. It was a connection between a man and nature, a bond built on respect, trust, and love. By the time the storm passed, Mateo had not only saved the horses but had also discovered something about himself. He realized that courage was not only about facing danger, but also about caring deeply and acting with wisdom. He knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now, he allowed himself to sit quietly, listening to the calm of the valley, the soft movements of the horses, and the gentle whisper of the wind. This day marked the beginning of something greater. Mateo knew that his life was tied to the valley, to the wild horses, and to the lessons he learned from them. He had embarked on a journey of responsibility and connection, one that would teach him about leadership, empathy, and the true meaning of courage. And as he drifted to sleep that night, surrounded by the animals he loved, he felt a quiet peace, knowing that he had done the right thing. The morning after the storm, the valley was quiet. Dew glistened on the grass and the air smelled fresh and clean. Mateo woke early, as he always did, ready to continue the work that had begun the day before. Though the storm had passed, he knew that the real challenge was not over. There were still many horses scattered across the valley, some frightened, some hiding in the hills or behind rocks. Mateo's task was not just to gather them, it was to gain their trust and guide them safely to the shelter he had prepared. He began by checking the temporary barriers he had made the night before. The ropes and natural dividers were holding the horses safely, but Mateo knew that these animals were intelligent and curious. If they sensed danger or discomfort, they might try to escape. So he carefully adjusted the ropes, reinforcing weak spots, and made sure the area was comfortable. Mateo believed that safety was not enough. He wanted the horses to feel calm and secure. This attention to detail showed how deeply he cared for the animals. As he prepared, he thought about his plan for the day. There were 3 main areas where the remaining horses were likely to be. The first was the northern hills, where young stallions often roamed. The second was the eastern woods, where older mares liked to rest. The third was near the river at the valley's edge, where families of horses, including foals, often stayed. Mateo decided to start with the northern hills because the stallions were usually more unpredictable. He walked slowly, making soft noises to alert the horses without startling them. The stallions were watching from a distance, muscles tense, ready to bolt at any sudden movement. Mateo remembered how important it was to remain calm. He did not run, he did not shout, and he did not try to grab them. Instead, he moved with steady confidence, his hands relaxed, his voice gentle. After a while, one of the stallions lowered his head and took a step closer. Mateo smiled quietly. He had learned that horses respond to patience more than force. It took hours, but gradually, Mateo managed to guide a small herd from the hills down to the shelter. Along the way, he noticed the bond that existed between the horses. The older stallions would lead, the younger ones would follow, and foals would stay close to their mothers. Mateo observed and respected this natural order, never trying to change it. He realized that part of his role was not to dominate the animals but to work with them, understanding their instincts and helping them navigate the valley safely. By late morning, Mateo had successfully gathered the northern herd. He paused to rest, taking a drink of water from a small stream. He watched the horses grazing peacefully, their eyes bright, their bodies relaxed. Seeing them safe and calm gave him energy for the next challenge, the eastern woods. These woods were dense, with thick bushes and trees that could hide even the most experienced tracker. Mateo had to move carefully to avoid spooking the horses that were hiding there. As he entered the woods, the sounds of birds and the rustling of leaves surrounded him. He could sense the presence of the horses even before he saw them. Mateo had learned to read small signs, the broken branches on a path, the faint prints in the soft soil, the occasional neigh or snort. Following these signs, he located a small group of older mares resting under the shade of large trees. These mares were wary, watching every movement with alert eyes. Mateo slowed his pace even further, crouching slightly, and extended his hand in greeting. At first, the mares were hesitant, taking steps back and exchanging nervous glances. Mateo spoke softly, telling them not to be afraid. He waited patiently, not rushing them. Slowly, one of the mares stepped forward, sniffing his hand. Another followed. Within minutes, all the mares allowed Mateo to approach. He led them gently out of the woods and toward the main shelter. Along the way, he felt a deep satisfaction. Each horse that trusted him was a victory, not for fame or recognition, but for the safety and well-being of the animals he loved. After a brief rest, Mateo turned his attention to the river area. This part of the valley was the most challenging. Families of horses, especially those with young foals, could be unpredictable. Foals might run in any direction if they sensed danger, putting themselves and others at risk. Mateo knew he had to be extra careful. He approached the river slowly, letting the horses see and hear him from a distance. He kept his movements calm and deliberate, avoiding sudden gestures. He spotted a group of mothers and foals grazing near the riverbank. Mateo stayed downwind, speaking softly, and gradually moved closer. A young foal bolted at first, but Mateo remained calm, kneeling on the ground and waiting. He didn't chase the foal. Instead, he let it see that he posed no threat. Slowly, the foal returned to its mother, and together they followed Mateo's guidance. One by one, the families moved toward safety, their trust in Mateo growing with every step. By late afternoon, all the horses in the valley were gathered, except for a few stragglers. Mateo felt a sense of relief, but he knew his work was not finished. The stragglers were often the most challenging because they were the most independent, sometimes older stallions who were used to roaming freely. Mateo prepared himself for another long effort. He had learned that the key was to remain patient and consistent. Every horse had its own personality, and each required a different approach. He walked toward the last group, calling softly, moving slowly. One horse, a large black stallion, watched him warily from a distance. Mateo crouched, avoiding direct eye contact, and extended a hand. He waited, breathing calmly, letting the stallion see that he meant no harm. After several tense minutes, the stallion took a step forward, then another. Finally, it allowed Mateo to guide it toward the shelter. Mateo felt a quiet triumph. This horse had been the most difficult to approach, and now it was safe. As the sun began to set, Mateo finally had all the horses under his care. He checked each one carefully, making sure no injuries had occurred during the day. Some had minor scrapes from the rough terrain, but nothing serious. Mateo tended to them gently, speaking words of comfort and reassurance. He gave them food and water, making sure everyone was calm and comfortable. Watching them settle down for the night, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. This day had tested Mateo in every way. It required physical strength, mental focus, and emotional patience. He had climbed hills, crossed streams, navigated woods, and faced unpredictable behavior from the horses. Yet through it all, he had remained calm, respectful, and attentive. Mateo understood that leadership was not about dominance or control. It was about understanding, empathy, and consistency. The horses had taught him as much about life as he had taught them about safety. As he sat by the fire that evening, Mateo reflected on the day's events. The valley was quiet now, the horses resting peacefully, and the sky painted in soft colors of twilight. He realized that this experience had strengthened his bond with the animals. He had learned to observe more carefully, to act more thoughtfully, and to value trust above all else. Each horse was unique, and each had responded to his care in its own way. Mateo felt grateful for the opportunity to help them and proud of the patience he had shown. He also thought about what lay ahead. The valley was vast, and the horses would always need guidance, protection, and respect. Mateo knew that his work was never truly finished. Each day would bring new challenges, new lessons, and new opportunities to deepen the connection he had with the animals. But for tonight, he allowed himself to rest, satisfied that he had achieved something meaningful. The night sky filled with stars, and the quiet of the valley wrapped around Mateo and the horses like a gentle blanket. He felt a profound sense of peace. He had faced a difficult day, but he had succeeded through patience, respect, and determination. The trust the horses had placed in him was a gift, one he vowed never to betray. And as he watched the herd settle, he knew that this was only the beginning of a long and meaningful journey with these magnificent creatures. After several days of guiding the wild horses to safety, Mateo had begun to feel a deeper connection not just with the animals but with the valley itself. The land was alive in a way that few people ever noticed. The wind whispered through the grass, streams sang their gentle songs, and even the trees seemed to move with purpose. Mateo had grown familiar with every hill, every trail, and every hidden corner of the valley. He knew the horses' favorite resting spots, the paths they took to drink from the river, and the places where the foals liked to play. His life was quiet, but it was also full of meaning. One morning, as he walked along the edge of the valley checking on a small herd of mares and foals, Mateo noticed something unusual. A trail of footprints led toward the woods at the valley's edge. They were not horse tracks, they were human. Mateo paused, scanning the trees carefully. For a moment, he felt a mix of curiosity and caution. Humans in this valley were rare, and he knew he had to approach the situation thoughtfully. The tracks were small but deliberate, and they seemed to belong to more than one person. Mateo decided to investigate. He moved quietly, keeping the horses calm as he followed the footprints into the shadow of the trees. Soon, he saw them, a group of women sitting near a clear stream, washing clothes and tending to small fires. Their clothing and ornaments suggested they were from a nearby Apache community. Mateo had heard stories of the Apache people from travelers and settlers, but he had never met them. He felt a mixture of respect and awe. He knew that this encounter required careful behavior. The valley was their home as well, and Mateo had to show that he came with goodwill. Taking a deep breath, Mateo stepped lightly onto the path and called out softly. "Hello," he said in a calm voice. "I mean no harm. My name is Mateo. I care for the horses in this valley." The women looked up, their eyes alert. Mateo could sense both curiosity and caution in their expressions. One of the women, who appeared to be the eldest, spoke first. "We know of you, Mateo," she said. "We have seen how you care for the horses. It is rare to find someone so gentle and brave." Mateo felt a sense of relief that she did not react with anger or fear. He nodded respectfully. "I only want to help," he replied. "The horses are in danger from storms, and I am guiding them to safety." The women exchanged glances and then smiled softly. They seemed to understand his intentions. Slowly, they invited him to sit by their fire. Mateo hesitated for only a moment before accepting. He sat down, careful not to disturb the small children who were playing nearby, and watched as the women continued their work. As they spoke, Mateo learned that the women lived in the valley and nearby hills, taking care of their families and their community. They had a deep respect for the land and for the animals that shared it. Mateo realized that their lives were very different from his own, yet there were similarities. They cared for life, for the natural world, and for each other. In that moment, he felt a sense of connection that went beyond words. He was not alone in valuing patience, care, and respect. Over the next several days, Mateo and the women spent more time together. They shared stories of their lives, their challenges, and their successes. Mateo spoke about the horses, explaining how he guided them through the hills and woods, and the women shared their knowledge of the valley, teaching him where to find the best grazing areas, the hidden water sources, and the trails that were safe to travel. Each learned from the other. Mateo's respect for the women grew as he realized how skilled and wise they were in surviving and thriving in the valley. One morning, Mateo was helping to move a group of horses toward a safer pasture when he noticed one of the women watching him from a distance. She had long dark hair tied back, and her eyes were bright and observant. Mateo smiled gently and waved. She returned the gesture with a shy nod, and in that simple moment, a quiet understanding passed between them. Mateo realized that their connection was more than just curiosity. It was built on mutual respect. The women, in turn, began to involve Mateo in their daily activities. They showed him how to prepare food using local plants, how to weave simple baskets, and how to track small animals for their needs. Mateo was a quick learner, eager to understand and participate. He appreciated their patience in teaching him, just as he had shown patience with the horses. The valley became a place of learning and growth for both Mateo and the women, a place where human and animal life intertwined in harmony. One afternoon, while resting near the stream, the women spoke of the horses in a way that surprised Mateo. "You have a gift," said one of the younger women. "You treat the horses with respect, not fear. That is rare. You are welcome among us because of this." Mateo felt a warmth in his chest. He had never thought that his care for animals could bring him closer to people. It was a new and powerful feeling, one that filled him with hope and purpose. The women also showed Mateo a hidden part of the valley, a small grove where the wildflowers bloomed and the air smelled sweet with pine and earth. They told him stories of their ancestors, of the spirits that watched over the land and the animals. Mateo listened intently, realizing that their respect for life extended far beyond practical knowledge. It was a deep spiritual connection to the land. He felt honored to be allowed into this part of their world. As days turned into weeks, Mateo's bond with the women grew stronger. They laughed together, shared meals, and worked side by side to care for the horses. The women admired his courage, his patience, and his gentle nature. Mateo admired their wisdom, their skill, and their kindness. Each day was filled with learning, respect, and shared effort. Mateo began to see that the valley was more than a home for horses. It was a place of community, where humans and animals coexisted in balance. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, casting long shadows over the valley, the women gathered around Mateo. "We see your heart," said the eldest. "You care not just for the horses, but for the world around you. That is rare. You are welcome among us, and we wish to honor your courage and kindness." Mateo felt a mix of humility and gratitude. He knew that trust, once earned, was a powerful gift, and he felt honored to have earned it from these remarkable women. That night, Mateo sat by the fire with the women, feeling a sense of peace he had never known before. The horses rested nearby, their presence a quiet reminder of his mission. Mateo realized that life in the valley was not just about survival, it was about respect, trust, and connection. He had started as a young pastor caring for animals, but he was learning what it meant to care for people as well. The women had taught him that courage was not only in action, but also in openness, kindness, and understanding. The days that followed were filled with small joys and meaningful moments. Mateo helped the women gather food, taught them some techniques for handling the horses, and shared stories of his past. They laughed together, celebrated small successes, and comforted one another during challenges. Mateo realized that life was richer when shared, and that true respect could create bonds stronger than fear or force. By the end of part 3, Mateo had formed a bond with the women that was built on trust, admiration, and mutual respect. They were not just acquaintances, they were friends and allies, each learning from the other, each sharing a part of their world. Mateo understood that his mission to save the horses had led him to something even more valuable, a connection with people who shared his values and his love for the natural world. Mateo knew that this relationship was delicate and precious. It was not based on obligation or power, but on respect and understanding. The women appreciated his courage and patience, and he appreciated their wisdom and guidance. Together, they had created a small community within the valley, one where humans and animals could thrive together. Mateo felt that this experience would shape him forever, teaching him lessons that no book or teacher could ever provide. And so, as the stars filled the sky and the valley rested under the quiet glow of moonlight, Mateo reflected on the journey so far. He had started as a young man caring for horses, but he had gained friends, knowledge, and understanding. The valley had become a place of learning and connection, where patience, kindness, and courage were rewarded with trust and friendship. Mateo knew that more challenges lay ahead, but he also knew that he was not alone. He had the horses, the valley, and now, the friendship of the women who had welcomed him into their lives. The days in the valley had become calm and steady, but for Mateo, a new sense of anticipation filled the air. He had grown close to the horses, guiding them safely and patiently through the hills, streams, and woods. He had also formed a deep bond with the women of the Apache community, sharing stories, learning their ways, and earning their trust. Mateo had never felt so connected to both animals and people before. The valley had become more than a place of work. It had become a home, a place of learning, friendship, and respect. One afternoon, Mateo was helping to move a group of horses toward a fresh pasture when the women appeared nearby, walking quietly but with purpose. They carried baskets filled with fruits, herbs, and bread, and their expressions were serious but calm. Mateo greeted them with a smile, noticing that they seemed different from the usual cheerful interaction. There was a sense of ceremony in their movement, as if something important was about to happen. Mateo set aside the horses' ropes and walked toward them, curiosity and respect in his eyes. The eldest woman stepped forward and spoke with calm authority. "Mateo," she said, "we have watched your actions, your care, your courage. You have shown patience, kindness, and understanding, not just to the horses but to us as well. Because of this, we wish to offer you something special." Mateo listened carefully, sensing the seriousness in her tone. He had not expected any formal recognition, yet he felt honored. He nodded respectfully, signaling that he was listening and ready to understand. Another woman, younger and smiling softly, spoke next. "You have shown a heart that can lead, protect, and care. In our community, we sometimes offer a bond to someone who has proven such qualities. We wish to give you a choice. 20 of us, women of our people, wish to honor your courage. You may choose one to share a close friendship, a partnership built on trust, respect, and understanding." Mateo's heart skipped a beat. He had expected friendship, perhaps admiration, but not a formal offer of this kind. He felt both honored and overwhelmed. Mateo took a deep breath, walking slowly among the women. He looked at each of their faces, seeing a combination of hope, respect, and trust. He realized the depth of what they were offering, not simply companionship, but a bond that could bring mutual support, learning, and understanding. He felt the weight of the responsibility. Choosing one person would not be a matter of desire or impulse. It would require thought, respect, and wisdom. Mateo understood that this was about relationships, not ownership, and about honoring each woman's humanity as well as his own. He spoke softly, careful not to offend. "I am truly honored by your offer," Mateo said. "I did not come seeking recognition or reward. I came to help the horses, and in doing so, I found friendship and guidance from all of you. I must be thoughtful and respectful in my choice. I want to understand the meaning of this bond and ensure that it is fair and honorable for everyone involved." The women nodded, appreciating his careful and humble response. For the next several days, Mateo spent time reflecting and observing. He continued caring for the horses, walking through the valley, and spending moments with the women individually and in small groups. He listened to their stories, learned more about their skills and values, and observed how they interacted with one another. Mateo realized that his choice could not be made hastily. Every woman had qualities he admired: strength, wisdom, kindness, courage. But he needed to understand who he could connect with in a partnership built on mutual respect and shared values. During this time, Mateo also considered what a partnership truly meant. He thought about trust, patience, and shared responsibility. He remembered the lessons he had learned with the horses, that relationships are built slowly, through consistency, understanding, and care. Just as the horses had to trust him before they followed, so too did human bonds require time, respect, and thoughtfulness. Mateo knew that this decision was not simply personal. It was about creating a relationship that could endure challenges and bring growth to both sides. One afternoon, Mateo found himself walking with a woman named Nayeli, who had always impressed him with her calm wisdom and gentle strength. They walked along the river, observing the horses drinking from the cool water. Nayeli spoke quietly, her voice steady. "Mateo, the gift we offer is more than friendship. It is trust, care, and shared responsibility. You have already shown you understand these qualities. The choice you make is not about power or desire. It is about who you can respect, learn from, and grow with." Mateo listened intently, realizing that her words were not just advice, they were a guide for his own reflection. He spent that evening sitting alone near a hill, watching the sun set over the valley. The sky was painted with orange, pink, and violet, and the horses moved gracefully in the distance. Mateo reflected on his time in the valley, the challenges he had faced, and the friendships he had formed. He thought about the offer the women had made, about the responsibility it carried, and about the lessons he had learned. Mateo understood that a partnership was not just about honor, it was about trust, mutual respect, and shared values. The following days involved careful observation and interaction. Mateo spent time talking with each woman individually, learning about her values, her dreams, and her connection to the land. He noticed who was patient, who was wise, and who had a sense of humor that brought lightness to difficult tasks. He realized that while all the women were admirable, A true partnership required compatibility in heart and mind, not just admiration or appearance. Mateo was determined to make a choice that was fair, thoughtful, and honorable. As Mateo reflected, he also considered the broader lessons of the valley. He had learned that courage is not measured by strength alone, but by kindness and understanding. He had seen that trust is earned slowly, and that respect is essential in every interaction, whether with horses or people. He knew that choosing a partner would require applying these lessons: patience, observation, respect, and empathy. Mateo realized that the bond offered by the women was a rare opportunity to grow as a person, not just as a caretaker or friend. Finally, after many days of careful thought and reflection, Mateo felt ready. He approached the group of women near the stream, where the sunlight glimmered on the water and the horses grazed peacefully nearby. Mateo's heart was calm and his mind was clear. He spoke slowly, his voice steady. "I am grateful for your trust and for the honor you offer me. I have reflected on the qualities I value in a partnership: trust, understanding, kindness, and the ability to grow together. I wish to choose one, not out of haste, but out of respect for all of you and for the bond we share." The women listened, their expressions calm and patient. Mateo continued, "After careful thought, I feel a connection with Nayeli. Her wisdom, patience, and gentle strength have guided me, not just with the horses, but with life in this valley. I believe that we can learn from each other, support each other, and grow together. I make this choice with respect, care, and humility." Nayeli's eyes softened, and a small smile appeared on her face. She nodded, understanding the thoughtfulness behind Mateo's decision. The other women, too, smiled and nodded. They had offered the choice not to demand obedience, but to honor courage, care, and integrity. Mateo's careful, thoughtful, and respectful approach reflected the lessons they had hoped to teach: that true relationships are built on respect, observation, and understanding. Mateo felt a deep sense of relief and gratitude. He had honored the gift they had offered, without diminishing the value of anyone involved. That evening, Mateo and Nayeli walked together near the river, speaking quietly about their hopes, their values, and the future of their shared work in the valley. The horses moved around them, grazing calmly, as if sensing the peaceful resolution of the day. Mateo realized that this choice was not the end of a journey, it was a new beginning. A partnership built on respect and trust could bring growth, understanding, and shared purpose. Mateo reflected on the lessons he had learned. That courage is shown through patience, that trust must be earned, and that respect is the foundation of any meaningful bond. The valley had taught him these lessons through both the horses and the women. He felt gratitude for the experiences, the friendships, and the opportunity to make thoughtful choices. Mateo understood that true honor comes not from recognition, but from acting with integrity and care. As night fell over the valley, Mateo sat by the fire with Nayeli, the horses resting nearby. The stars reflected in the river, and the quiet of the valley wrapped around them like a protective blanket. Mateo felt a sense of fulfillment unlike anything he had known before. He had faced challenges, reflected deeply, and made a decision with care and respect. The partnership he had formed with Nayeli was not only a bond between two people, it was a reflection of all he had learned about trust, patience, and the power of understanding. The morning after Mateo had made his careful choice, the valley felt peaceful and full of promise. The sun rose gently over the hills, and the dew sparkled on the grass. Mateo woke early, as he always did, feeling a sense of purpose and calm. The horses were calm and grazing nearby, and Nayeli was already tending to the small fires and preparing breakfast for both of them. Mateo watched her quietly for a moment, feeling a deep sense of respect and appreciation. Their bond had begun not with words, but with shared experiences, patience, and trust. Today was not just another day in the valley. It was a day to continue building their life together. Mateo knew that forming a partnership was about more than companionship. It was about shared responsibility, mutual respect, and learning from one another. He had seen this principle in his work with the horses, and now he would apply it to human relationships. Mateo began by checking on the horses, walking among them with calm and steady steps. They had come to trust him completely, following his guidance without fear. This trust, he knew, was a reflection of the respect and patience he had shown them every day. After tending to the horses, Mateo joined Nayeli by the river to help with their daily tasks. They collected water, gathered herbs, and prepared food for themselves and the horses. As they worked side by side, Mateo realized how much he had learned from the women of the Apache community. Their knowledge of the land, the animals, and natural resources was remarkable. Mateo felt grateful to be part of a community where learning was mutual and where respect was given freely to those who acted with care and integrity. The day passed in a rhythm of work, conversation, and quiet reflection. Mateo and Nayeli spoke about their hopes for the future, sharing ideas about how to care for the horses and maintain the balance of the valley. They discussed ways to protect the animals during storms, how to guide them safely to the best grazing areas, and how to maintain the shelter they had built together. Mateo realized that partnership was not simply about companionship. It was about teamwork, shared goals, and mutual understanding. As the afternoon approached, Mateo noticed a small group of horses grazing near the edge of the valley. Some of them were older, wise horses who had been part of the herd for years, while others were young foals learning the ways of the land. Mateo watched them closely, observing how they interacted with each other. He saw the lessons he had taught them reflected in their behavior, the calm he had instilled, the trust he had earned, and the safety he had provided. It struck him how much his work with the horses mirrored the lessons he had learned about human relationships. Patience, respect, and understanding were key to trust. Later in the day, Mateo and Nayeli walked together to visit the other women of the Apache community. Mateo wanted to show them that he had made his choice thoughtfully and with respect. He approached them with humility and gratitude, explaining how much he valued their friendship, guidance, and wisdom. The women smiled, appreciating Mateo's sincerity. They recognized that his decision was not about favoritism or desire, but about a thoughtful and respectful understanding of what partnership truly meant. The women shared stories, advice, and laughter with Mateo and Nayeli. They spoke about traditions, lessons from their ancestors, and the importance of living in harmony with the land. Mateo listened intently, realizing that these teachings were valuable not only for survival, but for building meaningful and lasting relationships. The day turned into evening, and the sky was painted in shades of orange, pink, and purple. The valley felt alive, yet calm, a perfect reflection of the balance Mateo had worked to create. That night, Mateo and Nayeli sat together by the fire, watching the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. The horses rested nearby, breathing quietly and moving occasionally to find comfortable positions. Mateo felt a sense of deep contentment. He had not only saved the horses from danger, but had also built trust, respect, and friendship with the women of the Apache community. More than that, he had formed a meaningful partnership with Nayeli, based on mutual respect, understanding, and shared responsibility. As they spoke quietly, Mateo reflected on the lessons of the past days and weeks. He remembered the storms he had faced, both literal and metaphorical, and how patience and care had guided him through each challenge. He thought about the horses and the trust they had placed in him, and he realized how similar it was to the trust he was now building with people. True courage, Mateo understood, was not about being the strongest or the fastest. It was about patience, kindness, and the ability to act with understanding and respect in every situation. Nayeli spoke softly, breaking Mateo's reflections. "You have taught us much, Mateo," she said. not only about courage and care, but about the value of patience and thoughtfulness. We are grateful for your presence, and I am grateful for the partnership we share. Together, we can continue to protect this valley and its creatures and grow together as friends and partners. Mateo smiled, feeling warmth and appreciation. He understood that their bond was built on more than friendship. It was built on shared values and a commitment to care for the world around them. The days that followed were filled with both routine and discovery. Mateo and Nayeli continued to care for the horses, guiding them to safe grazing areas, teaching them new ways to navigate the terrain, and ensuring that every animal was healthy and comfortable. They also worked together to improve the valley itself, planting new trees, creating small paths for easier movement, and building small shelters for animals during harsh weather. Mateo noticed that the work was easier and more fulfilling when shared, and he appreciated the lessons in cooperation and mutual support that Nayeli offered. Through these shared experiences, Mateo and Nayeli's bond grew stronger. They began to anticipate each other's actions, understand each other's thoughts without words, and support each other in moments of difficulty. Mateo realized that this was the true meaning of partnership, not just working together, but thinking together, acting together, and respecting each other's strengths and weaknesses. The horses, too, seemed to sense the harmony, moving calmly and following their guidance without fear or hesitation. One day, while walking through the valley, Mateo came across a young foal that had wandered into a rocky area. The foal was frightened and unsure of how to return to the herd. Mateo approached slowly, speaking softly, and guided the foal safely back to the group. Nayeli watched him carefully, smiling at the calm and patience he displayed. Mateo realized that every action, no matter how small, contributed to the larger balance of life in the valley. It was a reminder that responsibility and care extended not just to people, but to all creatures and the land itself. As the weeks passed, the valley became a place of harmony and balance. Mateo, Nayeli, and the women of the Apache community worked together to maintain the land, care for the animals, and share knowledge. Mateo realized that the journey he had begun as a young pastor saving horses had grown into something far greater. It had become a journey of understanding, friendship, and respect, a journey that taught him the true meaning of courage, trust, and community. In the quiet moments of the evening, Mateo often reflected on the lessons he had learned. He remembered the fear and uncertainty he had felt when guiding the horses through the storms, the patience required to earn their trust, and the careful thought needed to make his choice among the women. Each challenge had taught him something important, that respect, patience, and understanding are the foundations of all meaningful relationships, whether with animals or people. One evening, as Mateo and Nayeli sat together by the river, the horses resting nearby, Mateo spoke softly. "I have learned so much from this valley, from the horses, and from all of you," he said. "I understand now that courage is not only about facing danger, it is about patience, respect, and care. I am grateful for the trust you have given me, for the partnership we share, and for the lessons that guide me every day." Nayeli nodded, her eyes reflecting the calm of the valley. "We are grateful for you as well, Mateo," she replied. "Together, we can continue to care for this place, its creatures, and each other. That is the true meaning of strength and friendship." As night fell, the stars filled the sky, and the valley settled into a quiet rhythm. The horses rested peacefully, the stream flowed gently, and Mateo felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had faced storms, challenges, and difficult choices, yet he had acted with patience, respect, and care. He had built trust with both animals and people, and he had formed a meaningful partnership with Nayeli. The lessons of the valley were clear. Courage, trust, and respect are earned through action, thoughtfulness, and understanding. In the days that followed, Mateo and Nayeli continued their work with renewed purpose. They guided the horses, shared knowledge with the community, and nurtured the land. Mateo realized that his life had changed forever. He had discovered that true strength comes not from control or power, but from empathy, patience, and respect. The bond he shared with Naeli was a living example of these lessons, a partnership built on understanding, trust, and shared values. The valley thrived under their care. The horses grew strong and healthy, the land flourished, and the women of the Apache community continued to teach and share wisdom. Mateo felt a profound sense of gratitude for the experiences that had led him here. He had begun with a mission to save horses, but he had gained friendship, trust, knowledge, and love. The valley was no longer just a place. It was a home, a school, and a community where courage, patience, and respect guided every action. And so, Mateo's journey reached a meaningful chapter. He had faced challenges, made thoughtful decisions, and nurtured trust in every relationship. He had learned that the greatest lessons come not from words alone, but from action, observation, and understanding. As he watched the sun rise over the valley, the horses grazing peacefully and Naeli working beside him, Mateo felt a quiet joy and deep fulfillment. He knew that life was a journey of care, respect, and learning, and that the bonds we build with others, human and animal alike, are the true measure of courage and strength.